Welcome to the Seller Roundtable e-commerce coaching and business strategies with Andy Arnott and Amy Wees.
Absolutely. And I wanted to just follow up real quick. I mean, really, Chris, I think the point you made was you said, oh, I oversimplified it, but I think you're absolutely right. Really, the only difference is a volume play, right? So instead of selling, your widget on Amazon for $20, you're selling, 1,000 of them for $5, but you got some margin there. And so, there is huge opportunity there from the B2B standpoint. So I love that. On that note, Chris, how have you seen retailers evolve and respond to the effects of COVID-19? Like what are the average sellers doing? What kind of moves are they making to really respond and keep the doors open, keep the shipments going out?
Sure. I think we've seen a big shift in a lot of different ways. Number one, I think the biggest thing that we've seen is that we saw a lot of local retailers who either had a token web presence or a token presence in selling online, but that ne'er the twain shall meet, meaning both their retail channels and their digital channels, either from an inventory and visibility perspective, or just how they sold and perceived and treated a lot of times the digital channel as a second child, or their Amazon channel, or other selling channels as that second or third child, really are forced to integrate them because number one, that then becomes their primary sales driver is through those channels now. But also from an inventory perspective, you could get away with segmenting inventory separately, but now you can no longer do that. So we're now seeing very small SMB retailers having to adopt that omni-channel experience that we've all heard about as the buzzword for years, but now actually having to put it into practice. So I'd say omni-channel, even for the SMB, is the first trend we've seen. The second trend is around the end consumer wanting to buy locally, support small business that's in the area. I think we all feel that esprit de corps together. So even on marketplaces, finding the end consumer who actively looks for a merchant that's close, not just from the idea of potentially a local pickup, which has of course become a thing, but also the idea of wanting to support that even on marketplace sales. But the last thing, and probably one of the most important, is the idea of tracking. And before we saw probably a lot of common sense things around the idea that, okay, if you sell, you got to give a proactive notification, give some shipping tracking information. But that's really accelerated in the age of COVID. And it's no longer good enough to give that very passive token initial email and then delivery confirmation. It has to be a much more active and engaging process, meaning before the checkout, communicating what the inventory and delivery decision-making looks like. That's one. The second is being able to then communicate proactively. And then after the fact, if there are delays, things like that, over communicating. So really that merchant / end consumer relationship has become about 100 or 1,000 times more important than the transactional. And even with marketplaces where oftentimes the seller and the buyer may have a transactional relationship, you're starting to see end consumers pay more attention to that buyer and repeat purchases from that seller because of their shipping and notification policies of what they've put in place. So I think that that's perhaps a permanent change that we've seen. But the last point I'll make on that is to the earlier point that Amy had made about 3PLs and fulfillment partners. The permanent change is sellers of all sizes saying, I need inventory closer to the consumer. I need to have inventory pairs closer to the consumer. I have to reduce those days in transit. 2-day delivery, let's say that's now 5. It's no longer good enough to say I have a centralized warehouse because I have to now factor in delays. So 2 days may mean longer. but at least if the inventory is there, I can weather that storm a little bit better.
So, Krish, I think what I'm understanding is, in terms of changes for retailers, is that there's a lot of focus of customers being able to get things on time, customers being able to rely on those goods, and so therefore they're looking for things that are closer. I think there's also an emergence of apps that are delivering and allowing people to get things from their local stores very quickly. And it used to be Amazon providing 2-day prime shipping was awesome, but I think there was some things that happened during COVID that people lost some faith in that. And during that time when Amazon was not delivering, so many providers stepped up, and you could get things from your local grocery store very quickly within one day. You could get things from other providers like Walmart and other e-commerce websites on time. They were not delayed in their deliveries. And so what you're saying is that consumers kind of responded by saying, look, it's important for us to be able to get things on time and be able to trust where those goods are coming from. Am I right in terms of that? And do you see consumers kind of staying with that trend post-COVID?
I think we will. I think the local pickup, contactless pickup, and a lot of that is probably here to stay. But yeah, definitely, I think all the things that you mentioned are certainly things that we've seen in COVID, but that are permanent changes. And to be honest, a lot of them are ones that probably were long in the making, and it needed that extra push to make happen.
Got it. And what else have e-commerce providers had to prioritize in order to fit the needs of the post-COVID consumer?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is returns. Pre-COVID, a lot of us may have felt a little discomfort with the idea of printing out a shipping label, finding packaging around the house, doing that. And so you saw the advent of a lot of types of services where you go in person, things like that. I think that'll still continue for sure, but I think you're going to see a permanent change of the consumer feeling comfortable with initiating the return from home and printing that shipping label and doing that, even with packaging, things like that. So I think that's one thing, but on the retailer side or merchant side, you're going to start seeing some changes with the retailer having to expand their window of returns, expand their options for returns, and really make that a lot more flexible, because now more than ever, people are a bit more cautious in terms of their purchases, and we all know returns policies do definitely influence the purchase decision, but that's decidedly going to be more so in the future. So I think returns is definitely something that we need to really take a look at, and really providing those buy online, pick up in store, return in store, return online type of options. Those are definitely things we're going to see that I think are going to be permanent.
Yeah, we need to be flexible and be able to provide for those needs of the customer. I mean, they're going to be looking to be able to, if they're doing more shopping online, they're also going to want that convenience of, hey, I can return it at my local store. I need to be able to return it online as well. So one of our listeners has kind of a related question here. In terms of being able to get more goods and sell on more channels, Lisa wants to know, do you expose your list of providers of goods, so people like us, sellers who have different goods, do you expose us who are integrated to your systems with our list of products? So for example, Lisa says, if I wanted to drop ship silicone spatulas, could I look at somebody who's working with you and see if they're selling silicone spatulas and find somebody who provides these?
You know, that idea there from more of the buyer perspective is something that we've evaluated, certainly for the future. Our good friends at Alibaba, for example, great in terms of being a buyer related marketplace. Presently, that's something we kind of push a bit more on our marketplace partners, but that is something under evaluation for the future.
Got it. And that makes sense. I mean, you're helping us get our products out there to those buyers, whether they be B2B or B2C. So that's kind of, it makes sense. You're kind of a connector between channels instead of trying to be all of those channels. So any other big takeaways from COVID or any silver linings?
Well, what I'd say as far as some silver linings, number one, you're seeing a lot of brands having to rethink their entire supply chain, how they work with vendors, how they source, how discreet or unique they want to make their retail versus their digital channels. That's one silver lining. I think the other thing is that before we saw probably a lot of fulfillment 3PLs really saying they want to work with brands that are much higher volume, but now being more apt to work with the small to medium merchant. And I think another silver lining is, of course, being adaptable to the customer need in terms of buy online, pick up in store. I think one of the biggest silver linings is something I mentioned before, and that's around tracking. And that's the idea that because of this time, the over communication has become something important to both the retailer and the end consumer. And hopefully that's a trend that we'll see continue, because it really does give that buyer the assurance that they need that the product's going to get to them and that it's being communicated to them in a timely manner. So hopefully we'll see that as a permanent thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Krish, I wanted to jump back real quick to, you guys were talking about like order locally and picking up and things like that and shopping more local. The one thing, this is just an observation, nothing besides that. But what I've been really surprised with is when all of this was going down and I was going on to Amazon, I'm a big Amazon shopper myself, and searching for products that, the stuff that the search results were giving me stuff that, was going to take 20 days. What I don't understand is Amazon's got a lot of smart people there. Why aren't they showing me my local retailers that says, hey, I'm up in Northern California. Hey, this person selling in, San Francisco has a similar product that you're looking for. It'll get to you in a day or two, sort of this smart merchant fulfilled, way of looking at the data from Amazon's point of view in terms of people searching for products. And I cannot believe this is a golden egg for anybody from Amazon listening, as an Amazon shopper. And not only that, but as a seller, I mean, getting orders locally would be epic, that alleviates this whole, idea of the Amazon warehouses being stretched too thin and, products maybe that are in the New Jersey, center rather than in California or, vice versa is, kind of lifting, or even have a way to filter by saying, hey, show me products that are within 100 miles, kind of like eBay does. In this age of COVID, it's crazy to me that Amazon has not rolled anything out like that. And anyway, just an observation to build on what you were saying there. I think that there's still a lot of opportunity in terms of, some of these big marketplaces, getting creative. Not only that, but local pickup too. As an Amazon seller, there should be hey, I live, near this seller. Can I pick this up locally? That would be awesome, because a lot of Amazon sellers are mom and pops as well. So anyway, just some observations there. In that, on that same note, how is, because of the lost trust with Amazon and things like that, a little bit, is there any, do you see any kind of relation between shipping's increasing influence on the customer experience and then long-term brand loyalty? So, if you order something and it doesn't get to you for 2 weeks, you're like, oh, I'm never going to order from that company or that person again. Have you guys been seeing anything like that, getting feedback?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say we sure have. Well, the first comment I'd say, Andy, is first off, forget about ShipStation putting you on the payroll. It sounds like Amazon needs to. But the jokes aside, actually, our friends at Google have some degree of some of the local shopping experiences that you're mentioning there. So that is something to check out. And I do think also the advent of the C2C marketplace, like our friends at Facebook and some of the other newer C2C marketplaces, do hopefully satisfy some of that local selling and pickup need. But yeah, absolutely. I think these are all trends that we certainly need to watch.
Yeah. excuse me, in terms of getting an item shipped out and then realizing the customer doesn't like what what they've gotten. How does ShipStation work in terms of reverse logistics, returns, things like that? The easier you make it to return something, generally the more likely the customer, they may not have been satisfied that time, but they say, hey, this experience was awesome. I'm going to come back to this this supplier or this seller because they did such a great job, this brand. Anything you can fill us in on that?
Yeah. Well, what I can say on returns on our side is one of the big wins that we have is our branded returns portal. And what that allows a merchant to do is to create a branded experience with their own brand that they can send their end consumer to initiate the return themselves. As we know, there's a lot involved in a return: the inbound call, the request, the RMA, the shipping label, the inbound receiving process. All of that's cumbersome, certainly for the retailer, if not certainly the end consumer as well. But our branded returns portal allows you to be able to create that branded professional experience to send as a self-service type of model the end consumer to be able to initiate then on their own.
Yeah, I like that because you can really decrease the customer service time and energy. If you want to have the most frictionless return policy ever, is you just say on your packing slip, like, hey, if you don't like this, go to this web address. You can initiate your own return. You might want to not make it that easy, but you can. You can make it that easy where you don't even have to talk to the customer if you don't want to. If you've got a liberal return policy, they can just set it up and send it back to you. And then when you get it, when you get it back, you just, check it back in and you're good to go. So that's a great point in terms of, getting those great returns. With the COVID going on and all that stuff, Krishna, are you doing anything different in your daily routine to, keep yourself more productive? I know I've been working at home for a long time. I have 3 small children, and you mentioned that you have some kids too. I know I've found it extremely hard to focus, get things done, because not only am I working now, but I'm also watching children and doing a bunch of other things. Anything that you've learned over these past few months that you can share in terms of, getting stuff done from home?
Sure. Well, I've been working from home for about 3.5 years. So the change for me was more having my child at home, having my wife at home. So certainly I think that experience took some getting used to. But I think for all of us, as advice, spending time with our families, and then finding ways to break up the routine, whether it's going for a walk around the neighborhood or cooking or whatever that may be, really does help to break that monotony, not monopoly. I'm thinking of playing games with my 12-year-old. But I think more than anything, to realize that things like Zoom fatigue are really a thing, and to be wise and cognizant of it to try to manage that in your daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, are you one of those people who likes to always learn? Are you reading or, self-improvement, any books, podcasts? I'm a big Audible fan. Anything that you're kind of into right now that you can share in terms of, what you're into right now on the learning side of things?
Sure. Well, I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell's books, and I've read all of them. Right now, I'm finishing up. I've been a few years behind on reading Thinking Fast and Slow, but that's what I'm reading right now. And then I like to get a lot more depth on current events and politics. So I have several on my docket right now regarding politics and current events that I'm reading. So
awesome. Cool. Anything else that you want to share with our listeners in terms of, any trends, anything else you want to share, kind of as a last, last effort to kind of let people know, how to get started with, not only e-commerce, but ShipStation and what you see, actually what you see, in terms of people coming on board, how people are having success, maybe would be a great thing to share.
Sure, sure. I think, to your earlier points about adding selling channels, that's something that's really important. I find it interesting a lot of times when I find merchants who actually have a second or third selling channel and they use ShipStation and then don't actually add that on. And a lot of times we have to wonder why that is. And a lot of times that's just simply sometimes a setup issue, and our inbound call resources and support can help you do that. So that's something. And I was actually quite surprised to find that that's something that occurs. The other thing is I'll say that a lot of new entrepreneurs are getting online, and we have a coupon code if you go to shipstation.com of Let Us Help 90. And that it will give you 90 free days if you go to shipstation.com and use that code when checking out. So those would be the things I'd say as resources. And I mentioned before our branded returns portal and resources like that. In addition to shipstation.com, a lot of either the case studies or blog posts, yours truly contributes quite a few, particularly on international selling. But a lot of those blog posts really can help you quite a bit in your day-to-day. And a lot of the case studies are great because you can take a look at what somebody else did and say, hey, that could be me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing for us, like I said, circling back around for ShipStation, was just the time savings and the automation, right? If you're getting orders from all these different marketplaces before, it was so hard to keep track of, printing labels, things like that. The whole ability to batch and collaborate batches. So, we can spool up batches and you can, tag them or put in a little note like, hey, these are this product's batches, things like that. Ship these tomorrow or whatever, all that organization in terms of order management, I think for us has been the biggest impact that ShipStation has made. And on the last note, Krish, how can people get a hold of you in terms of, website, email, LinkedIn, anything like that you want to share?
Sure. I mentioned the Let Us Help 90 as our coupon code. My email address is in the chat, or certainly if you want to make it available. Krishna, my full name. I go by Krish, and like I said, the other famous Krishna Iyer is the CEO of Walmart in India, but krishna.iyer@shipstation.com. And certainly if you find me on LinkedIn, always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. And everybody listening to the podcast, if you haven't done so yet, please rate, review, subscribe. We really, really appreciate when you guys do that. We love getting those, the feedback on the reviews. If you know somebody who's getting into Amazon or e-commerce, make sure you share this podcast with them. We give you guys stuff that, people are charging thousands of dollars in terms of courses and things like that. We're here to help you guys. If you haven't joined us live yet, I 100% ask you to, because it's a completely different experience. You can ask me questions, Amy questions, our guest questions, like Krish, who has so much experience in e-commerce. We don't hold back. We help you guys any way you can. That's sellerroundtable.com/live. Sellerroundtable.com. If you guys want to find the old episodes, videos, all the resources that we have for you guys, go check that out. And we'll see you next time, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, if you want to join us live on Seller Roundtable. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for live Q&A and bonus content after the recording at sellerroundtable.com. Sponsored by the ultimate software tool for Amazon sales and growth, sellerseo.com and amazingathome.com.